It's time for another gardening update, so I think we'll just start by doing a walk by the garden so you can see it all. Then, as usual, we'll get out there and take a look at some of the things closer up. We've been doing a lot of harvesting this week. We harvested some pole beans, some bush beans, some onions, beets, maybe a couple other things. I can't recall everything. Looks like the corn's starting to tassel out and get silk. So we'll have ears to harvest maybe later this month. I'm letting the variegated corn have tassels so it can fertilize the popcorn over here that I've taken the tassels off of. If you're new to growing corn, don't take the tassels off. That's where the pollen comes from. If you don't have those, you won't get any corn. I've got some caterpillars on some sunflowers over here, and I'll just show you what can happen if you get a whole bunch of caterpillars on one sunflower. They completely skeletonize this one. We've already harvested off of the red swan bush beans a couple of times, and they still have quite a few blooms and little beans on them right now, so we'll give it another harvest or two still. And the calemas down there on the end are just starting to set some beans, so it won't be long before we get to harvest those. She harvested some red swan beans, and then went to get something to put those and the Monte Gusto beans in. Here's a look at the Midwest Pandemonium, a little closer. Starting to get ripe now, so be able to taste test one of those. I might just take a little taste because it should be a pretty hot one. I need to pull those peas. The potatoes are kind of stressed from the heat. Everything else over here is doing pretty well, looks like. And we have some tomatoes down here on the end. I've got some radishes I'm going to let grow here so we can have some seed pods to harvest and eat. The Monte Gusto pole beans are setting on really well, and we harvested a bunch of those already, and it looks like we're going to have tons more, judging by the small beans and all the blooms. Here's a look at the Monte Gusto pole beans on top of the red swan bush beans we harvested. The long beans are starting to set beans now. There's some real small ones. We've got some longer ones down here. Those are probably over a foot long already. Here's a look at what the whole cage looks like. They're already past the top of that 5-foot cage and have gone up the bamboo that I put on top. We finally got around to harvesting some beets, and we made pickled beets out of those. I transplanted some beets from our other grow bag, and they grew in this grow bag very well. We usually make refrigerator pickled beets with 1 cup water, 1 cup vinegar, a half cup of sugar, and 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. This is not a canning recipe, so they do have to be refrigerated, and they usually last us about 3 weeks or so in the refrigerator. I did a video that goes into a lot more detail, so if you want to check that out, I'll put a link down below. Here's a look at the tomato cross that I did last year. It's got quite a few tomatoes on both plants, and they're getting a little stressed from the heat. That rolled up leaf there is called physiological leaf roll, and it basically is just a symptom that lets you know that your plant is stressed. In this case, it's probably from the heat, but there are a lot of things that can cause a leaf roll. This tomato is kind of interesting because it just doesn't have much foliage. It has quite a few tomatoes that have set on though. Here's a look at the China jade cucumbers. We've been harvesting those already. think we probably harvested a half a dozen, and it looks like there's a couple in there that I see that are probably ready to harvest right now. Here's a look at some China Jade cucumbers off the vine. And so far, out of all the types of cucumbers that I've tried, these are by far my favorite. Here's the backside of the melon trellis. And I see down there that a China Jade cucumber snuck over here and is already producing fruit. The Chadwick cherry is starting to set quite a few tomatoes. It'll be interesting to see what that tastes like. The Sun Gold tomato here is setting quite a few tomatoes along with the Sun Sugar. I plan to do a taste test comparison of those at some point. It won't be long. After curing our garlic and our onions, this is what we ended up with. Here's a look at one of the largest heads of garlic. This is from Purple Glacier, and it did very well for us last year too. Here's a look at one of the chunky sweet peppers. I think that's going to be a really good one if it tastes good. It's really loaded with peppers. I'll just show you the other one while I'm thinking about it. It's right over here, and it's loaded with peppers too. Here's a look at some of the peppers over here. We've got strawberries trying to bloom there, and some micro tomatoes along next to those. Let's see what we got over here. Here's another row of peppers. Those ones on the end there are ornamentals. Hoping this one tastes good. That's one of the nightcaps. Tomatillo's doing great. This is a Rosella purple. Got some tomatoes on it. I think you can see some of them back in there. All of our tomatoes have fruit on them now. So next month's going to be a fun month once some of these start getting ripe. This is the second plant of the tomato cross that I'm growing. Did a cross last year and planted 2 of the plants. They're F1s and they're doing great. Better than the rest of the tomatoes actually. This one here, well actually both of them are taller than either parent, and they've got tons of tomatoes on them too. The muncher cucumbers are a little bit stressed from the heat. Those 100-degree days are really rough on them. We harvested some basil yesterday and made some pesto, and it was really good. We plan to make a couple more batches today, hopefully, and maybe freeze them. The okra is getting really tall, so it'll start producing pretty quick, I think. And we have the garlic that I let grow, starting to produce heads, flower heads. And you can probably see those little bulbils. Those will fall off and grow on their own, or you can pull them off and plant them. Some of the ink spot micro tomatoes are just now starting to get ripe. Looks like there's one there that's probably ready to pick. Here's a sunflower that hasn't bloomed yet. It's probably about 8 feet tall now or so. There's the sweet potatoes. They're finally starting to grow better, so I think they'll take off now. Here's some of the other stuff in the grow bags and containers. This is the candy sticks. It's got one sunburned pepper down there, but it's loaded with peppers and has one that's starting to get ripe. And we've got Midwest Midnight Eclipse 2.0. It's got some pretty good sized peppers on it. And some ornamentals over here. I've grown this Shimo Furry tomato before it's variegated. I'll try to get closer to the leaves so you can see that. But it's just loaded with tomatoes. Hopefully you can see those. This one is a Rosella purple. You can see the tomatoes there. And that one's a Rosella purple, and it's got tomatoes also. The bananas just aren't growing as well as they usually do because I haven't been watering as much. They love water. If you're trying to get yours to grow, just give them a lot of water. If you're just now finding this channel and you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.